25 years ago tonight, The Late Late Show with Tom Snyder had two good guests, Suzanne Somers promoting her book, Robbie Robertson promoting his latest CD, but more importantly, promoting the 20th anniversary celebration on VH1 of The Last Waltz. He and Scorsese did a behind the music segment that was getting shown with the original film. And most of the conversation with Robbie centers upon that and Ronnie Hawkins and Leonard Peltier. But Snyder is fascinating. And this is when he obviously knew he wasn't having his contract renewed in 8 weeks. And he does a bit called Famous Last Words. And talks about this becoming, the end of the pathway and all that stuff. So, if you're a Tom Snyder fan, you're going to like this bit of TV history from 25 years ago tonight. Quarter century. Boom! Passed like that.
Good evening, folks, and welcome back, everybody. I'm sorry I don't have my jacket on tonight, but for 5 minutes I've been trying to make it fit, and I just finally ripped it off and threw it on the floor. I'm Tom. You're watching CBS. The Colorcast is on the air now for Thursday night, the 18th of June, 1998. Is it this way at your house or at your office? Does this not seem to you to be the longest week there ever has been in the history of the world? I swear to God, it's Saturday afternoon already. It seems like we've done 18 shows here this week. Suzanne Somers is here tonight, and the great musician Robbie Robertson, and you on the toll-free. Last night here, I gave you some website locations to find this picture of the Lord that you can print upon the back of your retina and see as you close your eyes. And we had more than 200 emails again today asking for the picture. I can't send you the picture if you give me your website address. I would have to have your street address. But I can make it a lot easier. Here is the website that you would, and I'm assuming here you have access to a computer either at home or at the office. Simply dial up this website, and you'll get the picture, and you can experiment with it and have fun with it and make it your religion of choice or whatever you want to do. But that would be the website to check it out on, because we don't have it here for sale or for giveaway. And I would mention self-addressed stamp envelopes, but that just opens up a whole new kettle of worms that we don't even want to go into here. Okay. When I worked at CNBC, I spent some time sharing career highlights. And as I approach the end of this mission here, I want to share one with you that you probably missed, since more of you watched this and watched the cable show. And that would be my stint hosting what is known as the morning matinee. Remember that? I worked at a TV station in Atlanta, Georgia, and if you were the new guy there, you got to host the morning matinee. It was a terrible assignment because you had to get there at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning and prepare for about 14 live commercials that would occur during the morning matinee, which usually was a motion picture made in 1937, if you catch my drift. This was not the $1 million movie, this was the $12 movie. And we had one particular sponsor there. It was Kay Jewelers, and they sold everything but jewelry. And one of their main products was something, what do they call these unbreakable dishes? Melamine dinnerware. Remember that back in the 60s? They had these dishes that were made out of some kind of plastic that if you dropped them, they didn't break. So the pitch, and this is a 2-minute live pitch in the middle of the movie, Wonton, the dog that ate Hollywood. I would have a tray of these dishes, and I would drop them on the cement floor of the studio, and the opening line was, "Look, ladies, they don't break." And, of course, the camera would follow the dishes down to the floor, and they broke into a million pieces, and my stage manager started laughing, and I started laughing, and I couldn't finish the spot. So the program manager, a fellow named Neil Van Els, comes roaring down the hall. He says, if you break up one more time and make a fool of yourself on television, that's the end of your career on the morning matinee. I couldn't wait to break up again because I hated the assignment. So a week later, it's the same company, Kay Jewelers, and they've got a product that's called the Attach-O-Matic. Remember that? And the opening line was, "Are you tired of hanging up pictures the old-fashioned way?" I mean, I've never had a problem with it myself. It's like, they have this product out called Hamburger Helper. I think Ground Round by itself is just fine. It doesn't need any help, and I'm not knocking the product. So the pitch is here. They have this little gun that you shoot a piece of glue onto the wall, and you hang a picture on it, and that's the new way to hang pictures as opposed to the old-fashioned way. And they had a model there, and I said, watch, let's hang a picture the new modern way, or some line like that. And you fire this little thing at the wall, and she takes the picture, and she hangs it up there, and 5 seconds later, it falls down, breaks all over the place, and of course, I start laughing. Van Ellis comes roaring down the hall. He says, that's the last morning matinee you'll ever do. I said, mission accomplished. Let me out of here. Yeah, the king of all late night. Yeah, 1.3. Perfect, yeah. Anyway, what I thought we'd do tonight, and I was the only person who thought this way in the office, but when you have your own show, you get to do these things. These are famous last words that you may have heard at some time in your life or some occasion. For example, a famous last word could have been, that's not smoke, that's steam. A famous last word, huh? Or you're in a financial institution and the lady says, well, we're the next best thing to a bank. Or that should be enough gas to fly this plane all across Arizona. Or at a friend's house with a big dog. He's so tame you can put your head right in his mouth. Famous last words. You get the drift here? Buy the premise, you buy the bit. Yeah. Or in a restaurant. Believe me, sir, these are the safe kind of mushrooms. Or don't unplug it. It'll just take a second to fix it. Or, yeah, go ahead. Just touch those 2 wires together. Or, why don't we ask those soldiers over there for directions? See? Famous last words. Something I put together during the comedy meeting this afternoon. Suzanne Somers here tonight with a brand new book. Robbie Robertson with a brand new CD. You on the toll-free with a brand new idea. I'm Tom. You're watching CBS. Fire up the color teenies now. Catch our picture. Catch our pictures as we fly them through the air. It doesn't seem like 3 decades, but it has been that Suzanne Somers has been among our favorite performers on television, in films, and in her award-winning shows in Las Vegas on the stage. She's now the co-host of CBS's Candid Camera. Her newest book is called After the Fall, and I'm always happy to welcome my friend Suze back to the show. She's in her jammies again tonight. You always wear your pajamas.
Well, you're the only show that you can get away with wearing your pajamas.
I guess so.
Because you don't have to walk out, and the shot is usually right here.
Exactly.
So, you know, don't have to hold my stomach in.
I get the full effect, though. Yeah. This book is about what is now called the blended family, when a man and a woman marry and he and she have children and they all get together and try and make it work.
Yeah, very, very difficult. Have you been married to the same person all your life?
No, I've only been married to one person a long time ago.
Oh, really?
That's right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Would you like to know more?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, get your own show and I'll come on, you'll ask me.
Okay.
Right. Now, when you and Alan got married, you know, I know your husband, Alan.
Right.
You had a son, Bruce, and I believe he had some children. How did that go?
Alan had a son the same age, or just about the same age as my son, and we had been, you know, I had been with Alan for 10 years before we started living together, but it was always late at night. I'd put Bruce to bed.
When the children are asleep, right.
I would creep out, and I don't know, you have to understand that there was a me back then and there's a me today, and they're 2 different women.
Okay.
And I never thought that this relationship with Alan would go anywhere, and I was so in love with them, but it was my own self-esteem at the time. So I didn't really bring Bruce into our relationship until we decided this is serious. We're going to live together in the hopes that we will take the step to get married. So when we started living together, my son was virtually a stranger to Alan, and at the same time, he's no longer living with his son, who's the same age, and there's a lot of guilt. When I was writing this book,
that your son and you and Alan are the unit, the family unit, and the other son is with his mother.
Yeah, and his daughter, and so they would come over, and there was this tension because no kid wants a new parent.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
Well, you know, it's the old thing as kids. They read us the nursery tale of the wicked stepmother.
Yes, and that was the other thing I found in writing this book, that's the first big mistake, is saying, hello, I'm your new stepmother. All they hear is mother,
Yeah,
and in their
yeah.
minds they're saying, I have a mother, I don't want a new mother,
Yeah.
and if I even wanted a new mother, it's not going to be you.
Right, you're not the one I
You're
picked.
not the mother I want. You're a mother, all right. But I'm my mother. And it was so difficult, and I was so in love with Alan, and he was so in love with me, and we almost split up 3 different times because of the difficulties.
And
with the
how did
children.
Alan feel about Bruce? Like, was this an intruder in his life?
Alan, that was not on his best behavior in those years. Alan, to rectify his guilt, made my son invisible. In making my son invisible, I became protective of my son, and so I would take
don't
my...
get between a mom and her cub.
No,
ever.
the lioness in you comes
That's
out, and
right.
so I would take my son's side, of course. I mean, he's a child.
You know, they
and-
say the bond between man and woman is strong. Mother and son is the strongest in the world.
It's pretty strong.
No, to this day, my mother and I, and you and your
Yeah,
son Bruce,
right.
don't get in the way of that.
Yeah. Well, that's what was happening. And so Alan became the enemy. And it was so confusing because I love him, I sleep with him every night, but at the same time, I am angry. And hate is, it's not hate, but there's a rage in me. And the arguments that we were having were so out of control. The slightest thing would spark it because we were walking on eggs around one another all the time. So, I started out to write this book. I thought, I called it After the Fall because I wanted to kind of, 20 years later, look back at, isn't it funny, isn't it ironic that Chrissy Snow was the first feminist, that Chrissy was, I got fired for asking for a raise because I said, I'd like you to pay me what you're paying the men who are of comparable success in television.
Yeah.
And as I was writing that story, which is in this book, this other story emerged because I would take myself from the Three's Company rehearsal hall. We're bouncing around like the kids on the set, and they even called us the kids and bring the kids down and, hey, kids, and you're doing really well, kids. And we're all adult people, but we're beginning that we're kids, to feel that we're kids. And then I would go home in writing the book. I would take myself home and go, ooh, wow, we were not happy. And yet I have this incredible relationship.
How did this all become resolved?
Well, that's the thing. See, people think that they're going to go into a blended family and right away it's going to, resolve itself.
No.
It took us 20 years. What I have today with my stepchildren is so rich. And I believe particularly with my stepdaughter, that I've earned the right to be her stepmother now. I believe with my stepson that he's more comfortable because of loyalty to his own mother, that he's more comfortable with me being his father's wife. In fact, that's how I came to this. His mother-in-law, who lives in France, she's French, and I said, what's the French word for stepmother? And she said, well, there is none. And I said, well, then what am I? And she said, well, you are nothing.
That's the French word.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And at first I was kind of insulted, and then I walked around and thought, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm not his, I did not give birth, and unless he invites me, unless he doesn't have a mother or needs another one, it is not my right to call myself mother.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I have with both of them was so worth the work. It's about patience and doing the work.
And how thrilled was Alan that you wrote all this in a book?
I kept saying to him, I'd be writing the story, and I said, Al, I know it's going to resolve itself in the end. Yeah, the good guy's going to emerge, but you're not coming off so well here. He said, I don't care, just tell the truth. And so he says now that he's a 300-page jerk. But if you hang in there, the last 50 pages, you'll really like him.
He's an okay guy, huh?
And I read a review today of this girl somewhere in the country, and she said, well, for some reason, Somers was crazy about Hamill, but I don't think the readers will be. So it's pretty trusting. It's pretty secure of him to allow me to lay it out there. Sometimes life is not pretty.
One thing you've never done is not lay it out there.
I lay it out there.
You've always laid it right out there, and you've taken on all comers. This woman has taken on all comers, folks, all comers.
But always with a reason.
Yeah.
The first book, the alcoholic book of living with an alcoholic, that was, you don't have to stay where you came from. You can make it out if you're willing to do the work on yourself. Then I found myself in the second situation, which is this blended family, which has elements of alcoholism in it because the behavior is very dysfunctional of everybody and the fighting that we did. And there's no reason to write a book to say, it was terrible, it got worse, and today, wow, is it awful?
Yeah, yeah.
The point of the book is, hey, once again, you do the work. Do the work.
There's
and
a way
you're patient. You can find bliss in a blended family.
Let me do a little break here, and then we'll get to the good part. Okay? I want to hear about Tanya the elephant on the stage, and where she is now, and all that stuff. Suzanne Somers is the guest. She's on CBS's Candid Camera. Her newest book is called After the Fall. It's not a disaster picture, it's not a disaster book. We'll be right back with Suze and you on the toll-free after this break. Jeez. It's Suzanne Somers. Here's Carrie on the toll-free in Austin, Texas. Hi, Carrie, and welcome to CBS Late Night. Hello.
Yes, hello, Tom. We're going to miss you. We're going to miss you around these parts.
Thank you, sir. You may not see me, Carrie, but I'll be right around the corner. What's on your mind tonight, young man?
Well, I'm calling to ask how Ms. Somers feels about her, or what her son might think about his mother being considered a sex symbol, and also being in one of the best 100 American films of all time.
American Graffiti? Is that the one?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, it is.
You know, Bruce grew up with me doing this, and this is just what his mother does.
You're his mom. You know?
I'm his mom,
yeah.
and I think he likes everything about it. This has not been a detriment for him, except in the beginning, when you're a single mother and you raise a child, they get 100% of your attention. And then when my career took off, it got cut back drastically. And then when I moved in with Alan, it got cut back even more. And that's his issue there. But it was never about being a sex symbol, you know, because I've heard him say this to people. She's mom.
Yeah, exactly.
She is mom.
Exactly.
Yeah, I make grasshopper pie for him, which is just the lowest. I don't know why. It's a sense memory thing from when he was a kid. It's just sugar, marshmallows, and just dreck.
Yeah. Hey, Carrie, what did you think of the top 100 movies? Did you agree with their selections, or were there some missing in your view?
Let's see. Cool Hand Luke. I don't believe I see it on the list.
No, I don't think so. The one I thought should have been there was Rebecca, the Hitchcock picture with Joan Fontaine back in the late 1930s. I thought it was a great movie. It wasn't there.
Did you notice who the #1 actor was, or who was in the most films?
No, I didn't.
Ward Bond.
Oh, right, from
Ward
Wagon Train. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Wagon Train.
Wagon Train. What did I say?
Wagon Train.
Wagon Train.
Hey, Wagon! Yeehaw!
Carrie, I'm glad you called. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom, for all the years.
All right, thanks, Carrie. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Now, tell me here about, you have this great Las Vegas show, and what is Tanya the elephant? Was there an elephant in your act?
One of the best friends I've ever had is this elephant.
Get out of here.
I'm not kidding. I never knew you could connect with an animal like that. And I wrote...
With an elephant? They're supposed to be dumb as a post.
This elephant was so smarter than most human beings that I know. I rode her every night, twice a night, for 3 years. She and I did the finale together, and also an opening together, and it was so interesting. I had Elvis's old dressing room at the Las Vegas Hilton for 3 years, and we shared a common wall, Tanya and I. She was on the other side, and the stage was above us. So Tanya would listen for the music cues, and she always knew 10 minutes before we're supposed to go up. So she would come out of her dressing room over to my dressing room
for a cup of coffee,
and essentially, and she'd sort of stand in place, dance in place, and I would be finishing up the makeup and putting on my lipstick, and I go, okay, I'll be right with you, I'll be right with you, and excuse me, and then we would ride up the elevator together, which seemed very normal to me and my elephant.
What did Tanya weigh?
Oh, Oh, a few tons. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
she was an elephant.
Yeah, but some elevator, huh?
And it was made just for her.
I would hope so. Yeah.
But sometimes it'd be loaded with dancers. But during this part of the show, it would be just the two of us, and we'd say, and we had matching headdresses. I wore a red jeweled dress and a big jeweled headdress and she wore the same headdress. And her, it wasn't a saddle, but her beautiful blanket that I sat on would match the outfit. It was we were quite beautiful together. And
then when you would get on stage...
Well, we'd get out of the elevator and I'd go talk to some of the kids because it wasn't quite time to go on and do the finale. Tanya would go over to the curtain and she would listen, and as it would get close, she'd come over to me, and again, she'd dance in place and dance in place, and then she'd roll down on one knee, like, get up, get up, get up, and if I didn't get right on, she'd stand up and dance in place again, and okay, I'm getting on. And then we'd go over to the curtain, and I was supposed to give her a little tap, but I didn't need to, because she knew the cue, and we'd go out, and she'd make a big circle, me on her back, and she would then rear up on her hind legs and smile for the audience. I don't know how. She was so smart. Do elephants smile? I don't know.
I have no idea.
But she smiled. She would smile,
I'm just sitting here enchanted by the wonder of it all.
And then she would gently, gently, gently come out and roll herself down and roll one leg under so that I could slide off and take my bow.
To thunderous applause.
To thunderous applause.
Did Tanya ever have any accidents on the stage?
Actually, one night she did. She was just mortified because
well, I could imagine. Yeah.
Well, I would hear in the dressing room next to me, I'd hear that same. She danced in place a lot. And one night I went over and I said to Yenda, her trainer, I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, before I take her up there with you," he said, "I make her dance in place, and then she, you know, drops a load on the floor." And I guess there was more than he expected. And you know,
not always the way.
And you know, when an elephant drops.
Oh yeah, I hear.
It's true what they say.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Stand back.
Yeah, right. And I used to drag a fur around with me. It was like,
And who was the guy that trained the elephant?
Yenda Smaha. Yeah.
And then would he sweep up after?
Well, that night we just had to leave her where it was. Now, at the end of the show, then we take our bow and the curtain would close. And then Tanya and I would get back in the elevator. We'd go down to our dressing rooms and get dressed. And then she wouldn't, but her trainer would take her headdress off and I would take mine off and
by
take
this
off
time
my
he
makeup.
cleaned up the...
He had cleaned up the load, that load. And she then would come over to my dressing room because she knew at the end of the evening that I would let her have whatever was left on the fruit tray.
Oh,
and so
the buffet,
she could wiggle through the door. She had no idea that she was a big elephant. She'd wiggle through the door and then come up to the tray and swoop it up. One night, I don't know if you know, there's a comedy writer, Chris Beard.
Oh, yes, of course.
Chris was visiting us in the dressing room. He's sitting there. And we'd gone out to dinner. It was the second show. The second show's not over till 3 o'clock. And Chris is asleep. He's lying on the couch like this, and I'm going through what I go through every night. And Tanya squeezes through the door at the end of the show. Chris is asleep on the sofa. She comes over to get the fruit, and she's excited. So she gallops over there, and Chris Beard opens his eyes, and there's this elephant coming at him. But anyway, I got sidetracked. So we would leave after that, after she finished the fruit. We'd go upstairs in the elevator out to the parking lot, and before she went home, her trainer would let her have one big happy romp in the playground where she'd romp and trumpet and make these wonderful sounds. And then
what was the man's name again?
Yenda Smaha.
Yenda Smaha. I wonder if they ever asked him if he minded cleaning up after the dump.
You're just kind of transfixed on the dump, aren't you?
And then he would say, "I've never thought about quitting." What, leave show business? I've been dying to get there for 10 minutes.
I should know you well enough by now to know. Back to the dump. Back to the dump.
Right.
You know, and I didn't pick up the cue. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You know, we're both getting older now.
But you see, last night I had an email today. They accused me of interrupting David Steinberg last night. So this evening I'm being on my very best behavior.
You are.
Yes, I am.
You actually are.
Last night,
I love David.
So do I.
Yeah, funny guy.
I wasn't too thrilled last night when he offered me the part of the president in his new album on Bill Clinton.
Well, let's talk about that,
King
Tom.
of all late night does not play the president's.
Why do you think he wanted you to be the president's dick?
No idea. In any event, I have to take a little break here.
Gosh, and that will leave us all with a little food for thought.
Yeah,
won't it?
well, in a manner of speaking, yes. Yenda Smaha. Is that the guy's name? Mm-hmm. Is he still around?
Well, I have more to tell you about this.
Oh, thank God. We'll be right back.
If you didn't have a break, I'd tell you right now.
Yeah, right. Jeez. Back with Suzanne Somers, whose newest book is called After the Fall. And there's more on Tanya?
Yes, well...
Where is she now?
Well, that's the thing. I just have to back up one little bit. So after I left the Moulin Rouge, after 3 years, I was playing the DI about 6 months later.
Desert Inn.
Desert Inn. And I said to Alan after the show one night, why don't we go over and see Tanya? Do you think she'd remember me? So we went down and downstairs into the dressing room area, and I walked towards her door, and I started getting nervous because I know this person really well. And I look in the door and I said, Tanya? And she looked at me and she started flapping her ears.
Really?
And she makes a purring sound like cats do, and she started purring. I went over, I started rubbing her hair like I used to, and she was nuzzling into my head, and it was...
You loved her, didn't you?
I loved her.
Yeah, I
know. I truly loved her, and she loved me.
Yeah, you know what I want to talk about with you?
She's been sold to a circus. That's
Oh,
her.
nuts.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So anyway. What?
You're over 40, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But women today who are 40 and 50 are far different from women who were 50 in the 1950s when I was a kid. I mean, when I was a kid, women who were 50, it was all over. You know, their sexuality was all over, and their vamping was all over, and their flirting was all over. And it's not that way with women, or guys either, for that matter.
It's not. It has to be diet, exercise, and also...
Outlook and attitude.
Outlook, attitude, but also we're in the workforce. And it's changed us a lot. And we are sexual beings. I find now, not to get into my sex life or anything, but I guess I'm going there.
No stopping you now, lady.
Yeah, right. But I find that...
They're out there saying, you know, it's about time. We've been waiting.
Right, so think of my husband. It's about time. I've been waiting. Now, I find that now, I'm 51, I find that just everything is better. I mean, everything. And I think with the kids are up and out and gone, and we've got the house, and pretty much know what we do for a living, and all those stresses are gone. And there's some nights I kind of laugh with Alan and I go, our kids aren't doing this tonight. I heard Robert Redford on a CNBC interview, a compilation, and he said, I don't even find women interesting until they're 40. He said they're more beautiful and they've got it together. And
well, you don't have to help them with their homework if you don't want to.
Don't have to help them with their homework. And also, you're not afraid of your sexuality, whatever is there, and you know, you use the thigh master a little bit, and you look really good.
The thing that kills me is, you know, they talk about demographics, about the target audience in TV is like 18 to 34, and those of us who are over 50, we don't count for nothing.
Right.
They based all these demographics on the way people were in the 1940s after the war.
Right,
you know, people who are 50 and 60 years old today are not the same as they were when they made all these rules up 50 years ago. We're different.
Tell me about it. Plus, we're the ones spending money.
Yeah.
You know, they say, well, the advertisers figure by now that we're set in our ways and we're not going to try a new brand. I try new brands all the time. I'm not set in my ways. You show me something better, I'll buy it.
Me too.
They really need to change that. I mean, this network skews more to people our age.
That's right, and beyond. The mature audience.
The mature audience.
Yeah.
But we're living longer, and we're healthier, and we have money at this age, and
we know how to spend it.
And we know how to spend it. Right. And, you know.
Spend a few bucks on After the Fall, huh?
Only 23. Out of all the $23 you waste in your life, and you could find out what happened to Alan on page 301, because that's when he starts getting nice. And we haven't even talked about how nice he is.
Well, he's a very nice man, I should say that, and you can find out more by simply checking out After the Fall. Thanks for coming on tonight, young lady.
I always love it.
I'll see you again before we go.
Okay.
Okay. Suzanne Somers, the book is called After the Fall. The TV show is called Candid Camera. Next, the great Robbie. Robbie Robertson is enshrined in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for his many hits with the band and as a solo artist. He has a brand new CD, which is called Contact from the Underworld of Red Boy. It's in the stores now. And Robbie is the subject of a VH1 network show, Behind the Music, premiering tomorrow on the VH1 cable network. I am an enormous fan of your music, both in motion pictures and on records, and I thank you for coming on this program
Thank you
tonight.
very much.
I should note that Robbie did the music for three Martin Scorsese films.
Probably more than
Well,
that.
because the ones that stand on my mind are Casino and The King of Comedy and Raging Bull.
Right, and The Color of Money.
Let me ask you about VH1 tomorrow night. They're going to show The Last Waltz, aren't they?
Yes, it's the 20th anniversary of The Last Waltz, and so Martin Scorsese and I got together and we told some stories about what happened behind the curtains that didn't make it to the big screen. And yeah, they're doing like a 20th anniversary celebration of it. It's very nice.
And The Last Waltz is about the last night, isn't it? It's the closing of the band.
Yes.
What did happen behind the curtains that night? Tell me a little bit about the emotions that were in the air that night.
Well, it was just one of those, the gods were on our side because there was so many things that could have gone wrong in this. There was all of these different artists, and we played with everybody. So we had to learn all these songs. All that Marty is so meticulous about the camera moves and every detail and the lighting and all of these things. And while we were doing the show, like lights were burning out, exploding, things were falling down, and it all worked dramatically. It was like it was all done on purpose. The mistakes sounded brilliant, you know. It was in the middle of the thing, Eric Clapton and the band, we were doing something together, and he started to play, and his strap broke on his guitar. And at that point, without a fraction of a second, I just picked it up right there, and it was like, I got your back. And it was just like all of these things, you just couldn't have written the script better.
Yeah, but what happens is when something like that happens, the creative tension helps everybody along. Like when the strap broke, you say, I got to jump in there and say, I got to bring this guy back, you know?
Yeah, but that's part of that magic, you know, that you can't make up that kind of magic. It can only happen through, you know, just the circumstances and what's going on. But The Last Waltz, it was one of those things, because Martin Scorsese directed the film, for sure elevated it to a whole other place. But the people that got together that night, too, it was just, you know, you couldn't have a more extraordinary creative batch put together in music ever.
Let me ask you about the PBS program that's coming up, I think, later on this summer, in which you go back to what I'll call the old neighborhood.
Okay.
To where you grew up. And would you tell everybody where that was? You lived in a place called Six Nations.
Well, my mother was born and raised on the Six Nation Indian Reservation. And when I was a little kid, I spent my time between there and the city, which was kind of great to be able to have this key to go in and out of this world. A lot of my cousins and uncles and aunts and everything didn't have that key. They lived on the reservation. Now, as a kid, I thought when we went there that this was the best. I thought they had it made.
We're on the reservation.
Yeah.
And the city was?
And the city was like, people are like dealing, you know, with the traffic and, you know, they didn't connect the way that people did
on the reservation.
I mean, the water that came out of the ground was sweet, you know, and they knew how to make all these connections with nature and the way the family was, and there was music everywhere all the time. It's what made me connect to music. So it wasn't until years later that I was told, oh, it's too bad about your relatives on the reservation.
It wasn't too bad to you at all.
At all. I thought that was the best, you know, for me. And it is my fondest memories, you know, as a child growing up. And it was my cousins and uncles that said, see this guitar? Put it on your lap. And started showing me things in the guitar. It's what made me want to start playing music.
Right. And when you went back, what was it like now as compared to the way you remembered it as a boy? How was it different, if in fact it was?
You know, it wasn't terribly different. There was a little house that I stayed in with my cousins and uncles and aunts. There was 12 kids in this family. The mother and father, my mother and me staying in this little house. It never dawned on me it was crowded.
Yeah.
And so I went back to this house. It's the same. There is still no plumbing in this house. They just got like a TV antenna a few years ago.
And just, it was kind of this time warp.
They just got the TV?
Yeah.
There goes the reservation, pal. There goes the neighborhood.
Right down the drain, right? There was something so moving about this to me. And in the documentary that they did, the PBS documentary, the people that did that, they really did a great job. They really got the emotions.
And the feeling of the place.
They got the feeling of it. And for me, going there and visiting with my relatives and visiting with the chiefs of the Six Nations and friends there, and there was a ceremonial going on. And it was just, as I talk about in the documentary, just one of the most extraordinary warm feelings of my life.
That's coming up on PBS this summer, and I'm sure they'll be promoting that.
August the 14th, it airs for the first time.
We'll be taking a look at that, and of course tomorrow night on VH1, the Last Waltz plays, and we have conversations between Martin Scorsese and Robbie Robertson. The new CD is called Contact from the Underworld of Red Boy, back with Mr. Robertson and you on the toll-free if time permits after Robertson is our guest. Let me take you back to 1959. You're 16 years old. The band is Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks.
Yeah.
A band that played many nights in the middle of nowhere, I read today. Huh?
Yeah. We played this club circuit between Canada and the Gulf of Mexico. We played the Chitlin circuit down there, they call it, you know, a lot. Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks were originally from Arkansas. So we played a lot in that area. And then when we got too tired, we'd go up to Canada because you didn't have to play that late. They made the bars close early up there. So it was like a little trick of the trade that was discovered. And I was from Canada, and they were from Arkansas. And when I first joined them when I was 16 years old, going from Canada down there to the Mississippi Delta, it was like going to the source of rock and roll to me. It's where rock and roll grew out of the ground. In these places like Clarksdale, Mississippi, right across the river in Memphis and New Orleans. This was the dream come true for me for a little kid. And the music, everything was musical. And so that was true. And when we played in Arkansas, I used this a while ago. I wrote a letter to the President of the United States about Leonard Peltier, who I did a song about on this new record with from Leavenworth Penitentiary over the phone.
He is now serving time for
the shootout at on the Pine Ridge Reservation in the 70s between the American Indian Movement, members of the American Indian Movement, and the local authorities and the FBI.
And isn't his involvement in this in this incident questionable?
Well, what's really questionable in this, first of all, what happened in this shootout, this firefight, and it was a matter of members of the American Indian Movement saying, "That's it. You've pushed us
too far.
We can't be pushed no more." And then more authorities came in, and finally it turned into this firefight, an old-fashioned Wild West firefight. And in the course of that, 2 FBI agents got killed, and 1 Indian guy got killed. Well, they arrested 3 people. They charged 3 people with this crime. 2 of the people that they charged with it were found not guilty by means of self-defense. They were protecting their homes, their families, their land. When this happened, the authorities said, wait a minute, what's going on here? Everybody's getting off? Who's left? Leonard Peltier is left. They made a commitment that he was going to go down. And they moved his trial to a different state.
So in your view, he took the fall?
He was a sacrificial lamb in this.
You've written to the president about this, have you not?
And that's what I was starting to talk about, because we played in Arkansas so much, and he was this wannabe musician.
Right.
We were this hot young band around. You had to see Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks if you lived in Arkansas. So he would come to hear us play. And then years later, with the band, the Hawks became the band. And
I've got 1 minute here. It's all yours, but
you know, I thought the president, he must have been affected by the music of the band.
Well, sure. If he's a
so I used that. I used that when I wrote him the letter, and And I got a response to it, and I got another response from the White House saying this is something that deserves attention and blah, 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 all that stuff. I was grateful for that. Now that that was before I did this with Leonard. Now that I've done this, I'm going to write another letter, and I'm trying to get the support of a lot of people and just see if we can't get a little justice to take place in this.
We wish you well with that, and I look forward to the VH1 special tomorrow night, but I'm really looking forward to the thing on PBS in August, where you go back to Six Nations. And I thank you for coming in tonight. We're big fans here, and thank you for joining us, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay, Robbie, the new CD by Robbie Robertson is called Contact from the Underworld of Red Boy. You know, the albums were easier because you always knew what was right side up, you know. We'll be right back to tell you about tomorrow night's program after these messages. Thanks again. You know, every night I wonder how many people on the West Coast watch this program on the satellite. You know, now a lot of people have these little 18-inch satellite dishes, and I wonder how many people are watching it on the West Coast at 9:35 Pacific time rather than waiting until 12:35. You know, I wonder. Email. Let me know. Tomorrow night, Laura Linney is here and Harlan Ellison. If the winner never quits and the quitter never wins, then who is the moron who said quit while you're ahead? Good night, everybody.